Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Belinda Todd. I am an AARP volunteer from the Richmond area. And I am so excited that we are continuing with our Sunday sit-in discussions. Today, we're going to be talking about African American veterans of the Vietnam War. And since I am a product of being schooled in the 70s, and I'm sure that if you're on this broadcast, many of you are as well, and you know somebody who served during that time in the war. First of all, before we go into our discussion today, and I know it's going to be a good one, I just want to let you know that AARP we are doing so many things to serve the communities in which we live. And if you are a more mature person, you do not ever have to be lonely. You do not ever have to think that there's nothing to do, because there's plenty to do on AARP. I have done virtual movies. I've seen concerts. There are activities and all kinds of wonderful discussions. So we do invite you to go to our website and find out something that will interest you. So let's get started with today's program. I'm excited to have as our host today, Dr. Cassandra Willis.
Good evening, everyone. We are super excited once again to be here hosting with ASALH, our sponsor. We have had some tremendous programming, and this evening's program is no less than stellar. So let me just tell you what else we have going on, because once we get into this movie and dialogue, we may not have time to catch you up. We have hosted an Africulture series. Now, if Africulture, the word seems elusive to you, you have got to log on and hear Michael Carter break everything down. Since I heard Mr. Carter speak, I myself have joined my son and gone vegetarian. We're planting our garden because Michael has taught us everything that plants do for our bodies. So we hope that you will join us on April 26th. Now, April 24th, along with AARP, we will host Decluttering to Uncover Our History. Now, just the other day, I was cleaning out a drawer and I found an atomizer from 1950 from my great-great-aunt, wrapped in Sears catalog paper. Now, some of you remember that paper very well. And so I am excited about this webinar on just looking through the things in your home that may have some value. You may have some historical documents there too. And then on May 24th, we again will host Michael Carter with another Africulture series. And certainly we will put those items in the chat, but without further ado, we are so excited to bring this month's Sunday sit-in in celebration of Women's History Month. We are celebrating African American veterans of the Vietnam War with filmmaker, I just love saying that, filmmaker Anne C. James. Now, Anne has an extensive career in international stage direction and theater education spanning 3 decades. She recently made her debut as the first Black intimacy coordinator of Broadway for Antoinette's Nwando's Passover, and serves in that capacity for several off-Broadway productions. Now, I know what you're all thinking. What is an intimacy coordinator? Well, intimacy coordinators are responsible for the consensual crafting and staging of stories of sex, race, disability, religion, or age with appropriate culture, context, and competency. They consult on scenes with loaded, heightened, or charged content that draws on the actor's identity. I feel like I need that every day with me. Thank you so much for that work and making space for that in Hollywood, Anne. This work has led Anne to the television and film industry, where she has worked with Rashida Jones, Mark Wahlberg, Issa Rae, Will Ferrell, and Cynthia Erivo. If you want to read more about her and her company, please visit intimacycoordinatorsofcolor.com. But Anne's professional work in Hollywood is not why she's here today. While she has accomplished much on that stage, her proudest role is that of a daughter. She's bringing to us her film on her father and other African-American vets in the Vietnam War. This, of course, is near and dear to her heart with her father, Charles James. And it's very dear to me as well, because my father, who this webinar is in honor of, was also a veteran of the Vietnam War. So this is in his memory, and we salute him and Mr. James for their service to their country, to our country, and also to my father as a charter member of the ASALH branch. So welcome, Ms. James, welcome, Mr. James, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting us here. And not only am I a daughter of an incredible American hero, I am also a member of AARP. I just got my card in the mail not too long ago. So it's great to be a part of this community. And it's a wonderful kind of growth and transition in my life to become a part of this community. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm not going to talk too much. I just want to give you a little context about the film. I started thinking about doing a film with the veterans that my father was kind of hanging out with at, at his VFW. And I thought it would be a wonderful thing to get their stories on video. There is a book, and I'll let my dad talk to you about that. There's a book that they compiled of their stories and experiences in Vietnam. But I thought it would be a wonderful addition to that book to get some of the gentlemen on film talking about their stories, talking about their diagnoses of PTSD, and then also the healing processes that they were going through and experiencing in order to achieve over that diagnosis of PTSD. And hence, Black Vietnam Into the Light came into view. But I will let the film speak for itself. I'd also love to introduce my father, if that's okay. I've known him all my life.
Yes, ma'am. Nobody's better poised to introduce him but the daughter.
I just love him so much. And, besides being my father and being an incredible man to look up to, he is a stalwart individual in his community. He has served as the Grand Master of the Miami Lakes celebration parade. He works with the Civic Center. He is the board member of a theater company. He is an actor, a model. He is a wonderful husband, a great father, and a wonderful grandfather as well. Not a great grandfather, but a wonderful grandfather as well. And without further ado, I would just like to introduce you to my dad, Charles James.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ann, and good evening, everyone. It is great to be here. I would first like to thank the AARP Richmond for doing this for us. And my hope is that they will see something, some of the Vietnam veterans or some of the children or some of the grandchildren will see some of the trials and tribulations that we went through during our time during the Vietnam War. So like Ann say, it speaks for itself. It was a great honor to do it. And I'm very proud of my daughter. We gathered all those veterans together and they told stories that they had not even told before. And so it was her, the way she approached them and the way she respected them that made them feel comfortable. And so they shared some things with her. So I will come back on later if they have questions. But again, thank you for this opportunity to share with other veterans and other people. Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed that there are some veterans in our audience, and I would just like to say thank you so much for your service. And I'm glad you're watching, and we look forward to speaking with you after.
In Miami, Florida, a group of African-American Vietnam veterans is sharing stories and healing the damage of war. Battling racism abroad as well as at home, African American soldiers endured the worst job assignments in Vietnam. Many surrendered to the hardships associated with undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. The war left permanent scars for some: alcoholism, spousal abuse, depression, and the inability to reconnect to society. When the Vietnam War reached its height in the 1960s, African American men were called to serve in record numbers. Primarily recruited from the Jim Crow South, these young men left the battlefield at home for an uncertain future in a land far away.
It was a very unique time for black men. You had African American leaders like Jesse Jackson. Martin Luther King had gotten killed before I went to Vietnam. You had Muhammad Ali. You had all these black civil rights leaders speaking up about the war in Vietnam. I'll never forget Muhammad Ali said that there's never been a Vietnamese ever called me the N-word. So that stayed in my mind a long time because I was concerned about fighting the war for America, and all of our black leaders were sort of against the war in Vietnam.
Always military was on my mind. Even I knew what I was going to do, where I was going to go when I graduated. I was just going to wait for the summer to be over before I went and enlisted. But I received my greetings from Uncle Sam, and I didn't want to go in the Army, so I went and joined the Marine Corps.
So for those 2 months prior to going to Vietnam, we were working 12 or 14-hour days, getting medical equipment, supplies, stretchers, making sure our military vehicles were fully loaded, because we didn't know what we were going to face when we got there.
Most of my buddies was going in the Army, Marines, and other branches. But I went in the Air Force. I had uncles and cousins in the Air Force already. And so I went in and went through basic and went through tech school, then got stationed in Orlando. And then I was there for about 7 months, and I went to Thailand for a year.
6 boys went to the military, 1 didn't. The baby didn't go, and everybody else went. But me and 3 of my brothers went to Vietnam.
I got drafted. I was playing in the band at the time, and my partner, my best friend at the time, was the drummer of the band. He told me, he said, we're gonna go into the buddy system. So me and him got on the bus to the induction station down there, and tried to volunteer. But which we did, and we signed in, and I mean we got sworn in, and after we got sworn in, we've come to find out that that he had committed a felony, and he couldn't come in. And I told the sergeant that, I said, well, since he can't come, I want to get this other year off of my time. He said, it's too late now. You're already part of the military because you've been sworn in. And you can imagine what I said.
I had some close friends of mine that got killed in Vietnam. And when I got drafted, I got very nervous about going to the military because I knew that at some point they would send me to Vietnam. And I had all kind of thoughts at that time, going to Canada to get away from it. My parents and my family was very nervous about it. I said to myself, well, I might as well go ahead and serve my country. I didn't know if I was going to live or die.
Barely 18 years of age. Maybe my first flight, and it was a long flight from Texas to Tonsanute in the train. And nervous. The flight itself made me nervous. not knowing what Vietnam was really about and the dangers and what to expect. I was more nervous than anything in the beginning on the way over, and I just thought about family and just trying to accept what it was I was about to get into and just do the best I could to get back home.
But that was a way that all black soldiers greeted each other, showed admiration, showed love for each other. That was one of the most powerful experiences that I had in terms of the unification of the black man. It was almost like an African ritual, how we came to each other, stood in line to give each other a tap, a dap, and how important it was for us not to overlook that. My brothers from Miami, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Texas, they all had a different dap, but we all adjusted to that dap. And that dap was one of the most beautiful things to me that I'll never forget.
We're talking about the 60s. I worked tobacco, cotton, and so I had a lot of exposure to the Jim Crow setup. So I was prepared for it. You know, I live around it, I live with it, in a sense. So I knew I had survival skills.
The racism I experienced was in Fort Polk, Louisiana, because this white guy that from Fort Lauderdale, who we became close and our family became close. We went to each base camp together. We went to Fort Jackson together. We was together. We went to Fort Gordon. We was together. Used to spend weekends in town. And then when we went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, when we went to town, it was a lot of, we couldn't be together because they would fight with the blacks and we had to be separated. So what we did, after several weeks, we just stayed on the base because they used to bring in busloads of people from churches and things, and we would have dances and things. So we didn't go to town anymore because we weren't allowed to be close friends, white and black, not back in 1967 in Fort Polk, Louisiana, unless you want to get whooped.
For the first time in my life, I was exposed to racism in such a way that I couldn't really understand it, but it happened in my basic training. Actually, there was some issues there between some Latinos and different other groups of people. I was a peacemaker, but because of my background, I thought that since I was the one that initiated peace and trying to calm things down, why should I be punished? So I refused to do that Foot Locker drill because I felt I was doing the right things. They should be rewarding me, I thought. But anyhow, I was punished for that. I spent my graduation day cleaning the grease pit. Taught me a lesson, but it also made them realize that I stood up for what I believed in.
When I got to Vietnam, I was stationed up at a base called Khe Sanh up in the North Vietnam, up towards the DMZ, where I saw a lot of action, but also experienced racism even within my platoon. You know, when we're in combat, we're a firefighter, whatever it was, we were all together. But when it was over, we separated again, and it didn't make sense. Okay, and it was also confusing, you know, especially to a young man, you know.
Racist Southern boys and black boys ain't gonna get along. So I'm saying you have problems in the rear area, but in the field, it kind of tamped down, you know, because I could save his life and he could save my life.
PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm gonna tell you exactly what that is. When a person have an experience over and beyond the normal experience and shatters their psyche, their waking, sleeping, dreaming state of consciousness, the ability to concentrate and contemplate. When you shatter that, That's what PTSD is.
You know, you get back, you do your best to adjust, you know, and you see a lot, you grow up fast when you're 18 and you go places and see things and do things you normally wouldn't dream of. So you're a different man. I was a different man at age 20. You know, I did my time when I was 20 when I got back. I turned 21 after I got back here, but I wasn't the same kid that left by any means.
This term just come about in the last, it was like shell shock. You was crazy and you stayed away. You isolated, the general public isolated themselves from us.
I didn't know about PTSD until about 35 years after. I was in my 50s when I started support groups like I'm involved now. And I heard my comrades who were in Vietnam talking about all these symptoms. I started to say, oh, I got it, you know.
I must have been I'd say maybe in my 30s or 40s when I found out. I'm 69 now. So for a long time I carried it around, and I think the only time I actually really got involved in expressing it was when I came to this group.
You just can't recover with the time that you lost. So you just do what you have to do. But there's so much loss, family, wives, lives. And it's like the armored cavalry, now the cavalry comes. After Fort been burned down, there's no one left.
Now that I look back, I had PTSD in Vietnam because I remember the first time I was called a boy. We had some kind of misunderstanding. He called me a boy. And next thing you know, I picked up the M16 automatic and I fired at him. I don't know what happened, but he didn't get hit and I didn't get court-martialed. You know, so I could definitely say that I think I had PTSD then in Vietnam.
I was on a mission again, black dark out there. I got up in a sleepwalk. And I was walking out in the boonies. And before I got to my own trip flare, I stopped to say, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then I backed up and I went back and laid down and I didn't go to sleep that night. I knew that a war had had a lot of effect on me then.
A Viet Cong pointed AK-47 within inches of my face. And I thought that was it. And right after that, I started feeling these sensations. And I've been too embarrassed to say it, but since I've been going through treatment, I can say it now. They characterize it as tactile sensations. I don't know if you heard of that. You know, feel things crawling on you and everything. And they tell me I'm hallucinating, but you know. And how I was getting through it was, they call it self-medicating, which means substance abuse. You know, your mother's your best friend, so I used to go to my mother and we would be out there 2 or 3 in the morning with flashlights, her and my father looking all over my back and my arm, trying to see if they could see what I'm seeing, you know. Like I say, I've been married 2 times, and for me to get intimate with my wife, I had to be stoned out to do that, you know, because I was afraid the things that was crawling on me would crawl on her, the same way with the kids, you know. And I still suffer with it to a degree. I get medication for it. Matter of fact, when I talk about it, I feel it now on my back, you know. I'm laughing about it now, but it took a lot of counseling and everything for me to admit to that.
Because I do believe some of those experiences we had will never leave us. We just have to learn how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. I went to Phan Rang, Vietnam, and I was my job there was on airplanes called C-123 aircraft. We sprayed Agent Orange. That's what we did. But at the time, soldiers didn't really know how harmful Agent Orange was. And my job was to, we fill the tanks with Agent Orange, make sure the nozzles on the wings are clear, and so the spray can come out. And what we were told, and what we were doing, we were, killing leaves on the trees so the Viet Cong couldn't hide, killing the, rice and all this stuff. But not knowing, to maybe 40 years later, after the war was long over, that I was killing people, killing our own soldiers, killing Viet Cong, and killing me. And I'm still killing people right now. Although the war's been over 50 years, people still dying from Agent Orange. So I'm still killing people. And that really bothers me a lot. Not knowing, I sort of understand that the military didn't tell us what the long haul outcome of this thing was going to be. Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know, I don't know. But it bothers me a lot.
June 5th, 1968, we was running battalion-size operations, and my platoon, 2nd Platoon, was called to set up a position. And this is the confusing thing about the jungles. I thought we was backing back out the way we went in. But what happened was that when my squad was online, we was pushing forward, and with your hands, you're moving the bush out the way, and you're steady moving. And as we coming out the bush, the first thing I noticed was okay. No, they was already up. They was waiting on us. Okay, but it was too quick to react, and I saw the one that shot me. That was the scariest part, because they were just waiting for us to part the bush. And that was the scary part. And before I could say anything, he had to hit about 2 or 3 of us at the same time. Yeah, it went down in a blaze of glory.
When I became a dog handler, like, the dog and I became one, and to me, they represented another person, just like another human being. Dogs do wonderful things. They do brave things. They do things that a lot of people don't really realize that they can do, And so what I try to do is bring a lot of that to light and let them know just how valuable these dogs are. I always felt like after the war was over, the dogs got the short end of the stick, because a lot of them were euthanized. They were put down because there was such a surplus of dogs that they didn't know what to do with them in the military. So what they did was they just euthanized about 80% of our dogs, rather than repatriate the dogs and bring them back. So that had me dealing with a lot of PTSD for a long time, and I still go through it right now.
While conducting these interviews, I had a chance to sit down with my father, Major Charles Henry James, and his wife, Jackie, to speak candidly about how PTSD has affected his relationships.
I never anticipated being married to a military man. This isn't the first marriage for either of us.
The effects of Vietnam were tremendous, and sometimes you really don't know them until you get to that point. It kind of make you not trust or want to be with anybody on a permanent basis. But when I saw her, it had all the check marks that I was looking for if I was going to be into another relationship. And so it just dispelled all those rumors that I had about not finding love again or not being in another relationship.
I remember leaving the United States for Vietnam. I remember riding the plane over there. I had a close friend that we left Belgrade together, and we went to Vietnam together. And while we was en route to Vietnam, he asked me one question: who are you going to marry when you get back home? I told him, I said, I'm gonna marry Flora. He asked me why. I said, because when I get back home, she'll be waiting for me. When I got back home, the first thing I did, I asked her to marry me, and she did. And we have 2 kids together, 2 grown people now, may I say.
I've had 3 marriages. And all 3 marriages ended up almost with the same thing. I had all these anger management issues. I never knew how to control it.
I blame my first marriage breakup from my Vietnam experience. because when I came home from Vietnam, I married the girl, my high school sweetheart. And that was a rough thing, that me just coming back from Vietnam, you know what I mean? And so I really believe that's what the cause of that breakup.
And I had to do a lot of apologize to my first wife, my oldest two kids, you know, because I remember she said, "You're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy." We was married, and I didn't understand what she was talking about, you know. And when you mention crazy to a black man, you think about psychiatrists.
My relationship lasted 10 years with my wife. My PTSD got in the middle of it. It did. It got in the middle of it. God bless that woman for putting up with me. But right today, we're the best of friends, and we raised our daughter. We did.
You know, whoever stumbled in there, I stumbled in there, and they make you feel welcome. You know, there's always food there. Anybody buy you a cocktail if that's what you want. There's great music.
I really never heard about the VFW up here, post 8195, before until 2013, I believe. One of my co-workers joined, and he told me about it, and he invited me up here. So I came up. He loved it, I loved it, and we very, very seldom miss any time up here.
Most of the time, I can't wait for Tuesday to come so we can come down here and share a story with the guys here, because you know, I mean, it's not too many people you could talk to about wars and laugh about it, you know.
I found out that I was not the only one who was having a lot of anger issues, you know, stress issues, and just being able to collaborate and be able to discuss with a lot of other comrades who were going through the same thing, because I felt I was the only one dealing with it. Didn't know how to handle it. So from there on, getting the information from other people, it helped me to take a course of action that would help me to become a little bit more grounded and more understanding.
Look, it's a family. It's a family. We love each other. We can talk to each other about anything. We can laugh, we can cry, and it's all good. But if you cry, you feel so good. You can cry around these brothers, because we all been through some of the same things. We was in the same places. We might not have known each other while we was there, but we were there.
They're also politically involved and socially. When people are running for office, they come there to do debates or to speak to us to get the black vote. They put on political forums. They do the house buying thing with the vets, help them get the VA benefits and stuff. But you know, it's a wonderful organization. But it's a great social experience. But it's also a lot of serious things go down there, a lot of serious help.
The members of Post 8195 meet regularly to participate in holistic treatments like Reiki and Tai Chi. Tuesday evenings are reserved for group discussions and camaraderie. Visits from local professionals well-versed in veterans affairs help to foster healing.
I'm still in the process of healing. I'm gonna be healing till I leave this world. But if I run into a young soldier, first he got to admit to himself that he has a problem. Then go to the VA. The VA has counselors for PTSD. They have groups for PTSD, groups for the younger guys, you know, from Afghanistan, Iraq, and stuff like that.
We used to have a lot of Vietnam veterans out there that hadn't come in yet. I say to younger veterans that what we needed 40 years ago is in place for you now.
If you don't accept the fact that you have it, that you can be helped. But always check and see if you got it. If you have to come to the VA and tell me you want to see a psychiatrist, do that. But be aware of it. Don't be like we was. Like we walked around with it for years and didn't know.
Don't think of a psychiatrist as a person that you think deal with crazy people. They're those people that can help you. But you have to want to try to be healed and try to be whole again.
And do it for those people that you love and care about. Because if you have PTSD, you have some dysfunctional in your family, either with your children, with your spouse. I would say the average military person, particularly Vietnam, has been married at least once, most of them twice. Go and get the help you need so you can be a functional person in society, and you can also help the family and help those that love you.
Wow, just wow. I'm really overwhelmed. I'm having a moment because I just remember so many of my father's stories, and he has this photo book with all of these pictures, the DAP, the Black Power, the young African American men, and I'm just having a moment. So, Ann, when you were filming this and when you were interviewing, were you even aware of all that African American men were facing in Vietnam, and more importantly, right, to the story, your father's journey?
You know, I didn't know very much about my father's journey at all. And I think that's the case with a lot of Vietnam veterans and a lot of veterans in general, is that they don't want to bring those experiences home into their family. They just kind of are told to be good soldiers and to keep that kind of information to themselves. And the only context I had was the book that these gentlemen wrote, and my dad will tell you more about that, but I got a copy of that, and after reading over 20 experiences from 20 different 20 some odd soldiers that my father, that belonged to the 8195, I had no idea what they had gone through. Mm-hmm. And it inspired me to make this film. And actually, what inspired me the most was reading my own father's story in the book. Was quite a emotional moment for me, and it just drove me to action. I never made a film before in my life. I probably won't make another film. This was just supposed to be for these gentlemen. I entered it into a few film festivals, and then lo and behold, we started winning film festivals, which was such a great thing. And so that brings us to this wonderful experience today. But yeah, generally speaking, I did not know about the depth of experience that these gentlemen had to endure.
So we've heard a reference to the book many, many times. So Mr. James, tell us what was the impetus? What led you to putting these stories to paper, and how did you select and get really African-American men to open up to what's very, I mean, a lot of the stories were very, very personal, maybe some things their families didn't know. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, originally, part of the process in filing for your claim, you had to do what we call a letter to explain what went on with you. In order to get the disability, you had to say some of the things you encountered. We started with about 50 veterans trying to write their story. However, it was so traumatic for so many of them, only 23 of us were able to finish. It was just too emotional for them. They could not do it. So 23 of us were able to finish and put this together along with my good friend Bobby White, who was our co-author, and put all these stories together. So, for a lot of us, it was a little cleansing. Sometimes when you pour out your soul, you feel a little better about it. And as every Vietnam veteran know, you never really talked about what went on with you. Matter of fact, before I put this in the book, even my own family didn't know some of the things that I went through, and that's not unusual. Most of the Vietnam veterans did not talk about it because they did not feel appreciated. So when they came home, even in job applications, some of them wouldn't even put it on that they had been to Vietnam so that they would be looked at more favorable. So this book was kind of a tell-all for the 23 of us, and we hope that you know, some people could learn from it. And as an example, I'll say very quickly, PTSD and sleep apnea were not even diagnoses when we were in Vietnam. And every Vietnam veteran has one or both of them. Yeah. So this was kind of a way of, we never saw psychiatrists, we never saw mental health because we were soldiers and we thought we could handle it. So as a result, we walked around with a lot of these problems where had we chose to get some counseling, we probably would have been better soldiers and better husbands to our families.
This is so rich, right? Like I feel like I need to put pen to paper so many of the things that my father has talked about: Agent Orange, sleep apnea, COPD, all of those things. And then just the hustle and bustle of the paperwork. Like I've read his complete story that he had to write. So I'm very, very familiar with that. But people aren't really aware, and maybe they are, but the high numbers of African-American men that were actually in Vietnam. So when I think of my father being 18, right, and some of the gentlemen in the film talked about how young they were, set the stage for us, Mr. James, how old you were, how did you end up enlisting, and what was happening around your world, you know, personally and just in the world politically.
Yeah. Well, my story is a little different, but I would say in general, as you know, the draft, we used to have a draft. For those that are young, they probably don't know. When you reach your 18th birthday and you were a male, you had to sign up for the draft. And so on your 18th birthday, you got a number. And when your number came up, you had to join the Army, or you chose to join one of the other services. So we had people in Vietnam that graduated from high school and were in Vietnam before their 19th birthday. Many of them, their first trip away from home, all those things. For me, it was a little bit different. I graduated from college. So I went to college on a baseball scholarship, and I wound up, I have a background in biology and medicine. So I was able to join what we call the Medical Service Corps as an officer. And so when I went to Vietnam, that's what I went as a second lieutenant with my group of 35 medics. And our job was really to kind of hold a sick call, like you go to a regular clinic, kind of hold a sick call for my unit. And I was a little bit older. I would say the average age in Vietnam was somewhere between, say, 20 to 25, because we did have some seasoned veterans that went to Vietnam. But the basic trainees and those just coming in, most of them were under 20 by the time they got to Vietnam.
That's amazing. I can't even remember what I was doing in my 20s. So to be doing all of that is just amazing. Now, some of the interviews talked about just the camaraderie, right, and the services. What type of advocacy? I know you advocate some, but what kind of advocacy work is there around Vietnam veterans in particular? We've had several wars since then. So what specifically is there to advocate for Vietnam veterans?
Well, you know, Vietnam was a strange war. It was one of the first ones where, you know, we don't know the beginning, we don't know the ending. Those that went, some didn't even think they should be there. The country didn't even think they should be there. But once we got there, we saw a calling that we were doing something good for our country. And so we rallied around each other. And we did everything we could to try to preserve and protect those that went to war with us. And that was the glue that kind of bind us together. We came from different places, from different backgrounds, different ages, but the common thread was your love of country and your patriotism.
So I won't say the club. I won't call it a club. It's almost like a fraternity in itself. Is that something? Where was that located? And where was that?
It's in South Florida. There are several organizations, the American Legion, the VFW, and those are organizations that you join normally after you serve, either you retire or after you serve. And the beauty of that is there's a common thread, because once you get there, even like the Vietnam veterans, even though we weren't there at the same time all together, we experienced some of the same things. So we had a common thread, and plus we could talk about things. You can't have this conversation with somebody that has not been to war, even with your own family, because they don't get it. And so a lot of people there felt very comfortable there because they were talking to somebody that had similar experiences that they had.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know I'm hogging all the time, so certainly if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A. I almost forgot that we have an audience here, Mr. James and Ann. I forgot I'm supposed to be asking their questions. I have just I'm riveted by this, your documentary. So Ann, talk to us some about your emotional responses to the information and these interviews that you were, I mean, I'm not sure how you could put it together without crying.
Well, you know, it was very emotional, and some of the gentlemen, you know, after I interviewed them, I probably took about 15, 20 minutes with each individual, but they would tell me after the interview, you know, I haven't told anyone this story before. And it was such an intimate delivery of their life experience that I was humbled to be in the room to experience that. And, you know, I didn't cry, but, you know, afterwards I did. After the whole day, I did, because I was so proud. I was filled with pride for these gentlemen, and, you know, specifically my dad, but I feel like I have 17 dads now, you know, because they all opened up to me and were sharing such intimate parts of their experience there, and, you know, parts of their experience when they got home, that I felt very special, and I hold them in my heart to this day. And it's just something that you could never forget, being able to be in the room with people who carry such heroism under duress and under such pressure and under such, you know, hatred and Jim Crow treatment and racism, and yet they still fought for their country. So it's very moving for me as an interviewer to be able to talk to them and to speak with them. And I did drop a link, yeah, and there the link goes again, for the book. If you want to pick up a very interesting read, you can do that with this book. But yeah, it was very emotional, but I held it together when I was talking to them, because they deserved that. They deserved it.
So I do see a few questions in the chat. I was looking at the Q&A. So someone said, Mr. James, can you talk a little bit more about the DAP? They had never heard that term before.
The DAP, yeah, the DAP is it's kind of like a ritual. And if you, to put it in today's perspective, when you see the basketball players, the NBA players, the football players, when they greet each other, we didn't do handshakes. And we, like Bobby said, different parts of the country had different parts of the DAP. And so that was your greeting. Instead of shaking a hand and saying hello, you went through your DAP. Some were 5 seconds long, some were 30 seconds long, some were some minutes long, and they just went on and on. But it was a way to say, I know who you are, you know who I am, I'm your brother, you're my brother, we're in this together.
My son and his father have their own
Yes.
special
Even today, you see people, how they greet each other. Even on the basketball game yesterday, they have their little ritual of how they greet each other and how they thank each other for whatever contribution they had made.
Well, there was a big moment with President Obama when he was first president and he was walking and he shook everybody's hand. He dapped it. And so Black America, we know what that means instantly when there's dap. Like you already know what it means. So, Mr. James,
I just wanted to bring up too, just in case anybody missed it, DAP stands for Dignity and Pride.
I did not know that. Dignity and pride. Wow, that puts a new context to that. So, Mr. James, you talked some, you mentioned briefly about not everybody believing in the war, and it was a huge political uprising around the Vietnam War. So, can you talk some about life, adjusting to life after the Vietnam War, and what did you do later?
Yeah, the whole idea is that, like I said, I was a little bit older. I had my degree. Just to give you an example, a kid joins 18. You go through basic training and AIT. You learn how to shoot every weapon. You learn how to throw grenades. And you go to war and you go for a year. And then you come back home. Now I want you to put on a shirt and a tie. And I want you to sit in a classroom. They never had that experience of growing up. They grew up in Vietnam. I was a little bit older. So I think when I came back, I was probably 22 or 23, where most of them were like 18 or 19. And so during that time, it was very difficult to cope. I had my degree, and so therefore I was able to get a job. A lot of them had no training because they were infantrymen, or if you were a cook, you may have, but they were not equipped to join. And then the stigma of the war, and like I said before, if they knew you in Vietnam, they were a little reluctant to hire you. They looked at you like, you were a little bit off. And so some of the companies were not able. And so what a lot of them did, they started in Vietnam. One of my colleagues said medicating. And so they brought that drug habit and that alcohol habit back to the US to cope. That was the way they coped in Vietnam. So they say, let me continue to.
Uh-oh. So we might have a little technical difficulties with Mr. James. And I'm gonna pop to you for a second.
Incarcerated.
Oh. Sorry, Dad, you went froze for a minute.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So it was a very different transition. And like I said, those that had training, those that had education, they were able to cope a little bit, but a majority of them were not. And so they had no skills, and they had no way of really coping. And then society did not really welcome them. I always say in the book, when I came back from Vietnam the first time, I had to pull my uniform off in San Francisco because they were protesting outside of the airport. And so I went to Texas. I had to find my clothing and change it, and I went to Texas in civilian clothing.
Thank you. I'm still I'm so caught up. So, Ann, can you tell us what your plans are? I know you said you don't consider yourself a filmmaker. This was your first, but we are very curious. And there was a question, what are your plans for the documentary at this point?
I call this documentary the little film that could, the little documentary that could. Like I said, it started from a very humble desire to interview these gentlemen and maybe share it and show it at the VFW in Hollywood, Florida. I think that was it. So far, we've won 6 national awards and an international award. And I got even a little trophy for the documentary winning a filmmaker, an independent film award. So I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. It's out there in the world now. And, you know, you found us, or Janae found us, and, you know, kind of brought us into this beautiful experience. So I'm just going to let it do what it's going to do. You know how they say, let it do what it do, and see what happens with it. You know, there has been a little discussion. My father is encouraging me to do another documentary film. I'm very, very interested in women in the military and what they sometimes have to endure in predominantly male environments. And there's a lot of discussion about assault and sexual assault with women in the military. And so I may be interested in, I've done a couple of interviews. I've been so busy as an intimacy coordinator that I haven't had a chance to really dive down into it, but who knows, there may be another documentary that kind of brings those issues to light in the military. But yeah.
We can't wait. Please, we can't wait. So Mr. James, what do you do with the VFW chapter now?
Okay, well, we were on Zoom, but now I guess about the last 7 or 8 months. But the VFW is a 7-day-a-week organization. And a lot of people just go there, they stop by in the evening. Every night, Tuesday night is really designed for Vietnam veterans. And then I think on Wednesday, it's Iraq and Afghanistan. And we just started a new one with LBGQ people, because that's a very interesting and overlooked group of individuals. So the military, along with the VA in Miami, are trying to get a group together to, you know, see where they fit and how they can become productive citizens, because some of them are even ostracized more than, say, African Americans because of their sexual orientation. So there's a little bit of movement in that. It's not a great movement, but the VFW has opened the doors to house that meeting once a week. So we're in the infancy stages right before the pandemic, and now we have to get it started again. But the VFW is like a club. And like I say, we have lunches in there. Matter of fact, there's a lunch on next week for all Vietnam veterans, because as you know, this is Vietnam month. And we have football games, and it's just a place to hang. And a lot of people like it because they feel very comfortable there. And the conversations always go around the military. Whether you spent 2 years or 30 years, you have something in common. So the VFW and the American Legion are two of the locations where in every city, they almost have one. And you're welcome once you become a Vietnam veteran. I mean, once you become a veteran and you served overseas, you're welcome at any of them anywhere in the country.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of the questions, was it statewide? And you just answered that they're really everywhere. So what would you say to another Vietnam veteran that is, you know, is out there on their own? And some of the gentlemen talked about that, out there on their own. What would you say to them to really encourage them to get in a support group, or, you know, offload that emotion?
Well, what I will say is that when we came home, the VA was not equipped to handle veterans. And so what happened when they went to the VA, like I said, in the early 60s, mid 60s, they were kind of turned away. But most of them worked for the post office, or they had medical care through their employment. So they never went back to the VA. And so if I see them every day, I encourage them to file their claim with the VA. I encourage them to go to the VA, even if they have a civilian doctor. Take those medical records and order your medical records from the repository in St. Louis for Army, and merge those records with the ones that you have at your civilian doctor and let a physician look at them and see if there's any disability or you're eligible for any kind of compensation. And I know a lot of veterans.
I just remember my father going through that paperwork, and Mr. James, he actually lost an eye. He was actually blind.
Homeless women.
I was just saying, we lost you for a second. I was saying,
whatever. And I say, you know, I get your disability. Let's say it's $600 and you have 3 grandkids under 5 years old. What if you gave them $200 a piece? By the time they get to be 18 years old, they would say, this came from my grandfather, this came from my grandmother. But we military people are not easily led to the hospital. We're not really led because we came up in an era where we can cope with anything. You're not going to get promoted again. So don't worry about not getting promoted because of your medical record. Go and get your help you need. That helps you with your family, with relationships. I would say 80% of the divorces came from Vietnam veterans not knowing how to cope once they got back home, maybe higher than that. So my word is, please go and get some help. Like I say, PTSD and sleep apnea wasn't even a diagnosis for veterans when we came home. Right. Every one of us have one or both of them. So go to the doctor, let them evaluate you, and let them determine if compensation is warranted.
And I will say that my father was considered 100% disabled because of the war. And I actually got to go to college free because of that.
Yes.
So there are benefits. I got my entire bachelor's degree. So the federal government also sent me. So the state Veteran Affairs paid my tuition, but the feds actually sent me $400 a month, which was big money. It's probably more now, back in the 90s when I graduated. So, you know, to your point, there are some benefits there for children, grandchildren, and spouses. So I hope that veterans will consider that. I don't see any more questions. Does anybody have any more questions? We're gonna allow you both to have your final words. I must say, this has been a pleasure sitting in with you all. As you all know, during the 60s, sit-ins were used to spread information. They were a way to give valuable information to our communities. And certainly you all have blessed us today with some information we did not know. This has been amazing. I see Shelley Murphy is here, the genealogist supreme. And so with the information you all have given us and the information I've learned from her, I'm going to dig a little bit more into my father's story and put those things and documents together that we have had over the years, not knowing really what they were, right? So we're going to give you final words to close us out.
I'll let Ann close it out, but I'll just say thank you from AARP. And if we helped one person, if we helped one family member to understand what their spouse went through, I think it was well worth it.
Thank you.
And I just would love to just agree with that. Thank you so much for inviting us. I really appreciate the opportunity to share the stories of these particular gentlemen and to inspire you to find your own story and to find healing and to seek out healing, even if you're not a veteran. If you feel as though there's some, symptoms of PTSD, it's always great to get counseling and get better. The world is not an easy place. And if we can get people on our side that can help us mentally, we do a better job as citizens to this great country. So I thank you all so much.
Thank you. And we certainly hope this is not your last documentary.
I don't know. I guess it's
amazing
not.
for a first time. Just amazing. You just captured the essence of the men so well. So thank you all. Thank you to AARP for bringing us this information, and thank you to the Richmond chapter of ASALH for preserving these stories, right? That's our mission, to preserve these stories. So thank you all. We enjoyed sitting in. Lots and lots of compliments to both Mr. James.
Yeah, so nice.
In the chat, everyone is saying thank you for your service. Thank you for your story. And you all have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And